HBCU Digest Radio, welcome back to our presidential series. Distinguished guest today, a triumvirate of greatness from America's HBCU, Paul Quinn College. We are happy to be joined by Vice President of Institutional Programs, Dr. Kizuwanda Grant, Paul Quinn's Program Coordinator of Mental Health Services, Dr. Stacia Alexander, and the President of Paul Quinn College, Dr. Michael Sorrell. So this is a treat for me because we're talking about something that's critical to the nation's well-being, but we're having an HBCU to pioneer an innovative way of looking at this. And this is Paul Quinn's mental health assessment program, which launched in full about 3 years ago, but is really capturing attention now in its third year for introducing first-year students and students at large to opportunities to speak with a counselor, to receive mental health assessment and treatment opportunities on campus in partnership with the nearby University of Texas Southwestern Medical School. So, Dr. Grant, first, congratulations on the evolution of such an incredible program and particularly for the presidents who are listening and who will forward this to their staff to set this up. How does something like this take shape in partnership with another institution on your campus specifically for your student profile?
Well, there's a lot of moving pieces to where we are today, but I do believe it started with an initial relationship between President Sorrell and a staff member at UT Southwestern who was willing to assist. I believe that Paul Quinn College uniquely does not mind asking for assistance. When our students have an issue, there's a problem that needs to be solved, we don't mind asking for help. And so by asking for help, we were brought to someone at UT Southwestern who was willing to really go out on a limb and say, I believe that we can assist Paul Quinn, and they came and spoke to staff and to students and provided a diagnosis of students who were most likely suffering from PTSD. And that conversation rolled into UT Southwestern assigning a resident to come to campus once a week to meet with students, to provide counseling, to provide medication prescriptions if needed. And then from there, we wanted to expand and grow. It was very difficult to tell students kind of out of the blue, you should go see Dr. Moore, who is a psychiatrist. And the student's immediate reaction would be, well, I'm not crazy, I don't need to talk to her. And there was a lot of hesitation to do such a thing. And so we had to build in various layers of services so that the students would not be apprehensive to mental health counseling, but so that they would see it on campus more than just once a week. And so if we fast forward to now, summer of 2019, we have a mental health clinic on campus that is staffed by Dr. Alexander and Ms. Belton, who are here full time, and UT Southwestern still comes one day a week for about 5 hours a day on a Thursday. But our goal is to bring students in to Paul Quinn College during the Summer Bridge program, and they are immediately introduced to the idea of mental health and wellness as part of our new student orientation and introducing them to the institution. A week after that mental health orientation, we began our initial screenings, which is what you referred to. They sit with a trained professional for about 45 minutes to an hour and answer questions about their upbringing, their past, things that they've been through, how they feel about things, how they interpret things around them. And that information is used to inform both the clinic and UT Southwestern staff, but also institutional programs for the college. On an institutional level, we plan programs that address the things that come up in the screening. Could be stress, dealing with loss of a loved one, could be relationship and communication issues. But we also use the information to identify students who need a specific follow-up from a professional, whether that's a licensed counselor like Dr. Alexander or Ms. Belton, or it could be a follow-up from a psychiatrist. And those screenings are happening right now with our current Summer Bridge class. And our goal is to assess every one of them. It's about 150 this summer, and anyone who is not assessed this summer will circle back to in the fall to ensure that every new student on campus has had the opportunity for the screening.
Man, it's just so important, and I can't recall, shame on me, that y'all are 3 years into this and we're just now having kind of a national conversation about it. But Dr. Alexander, what has it been like from over the last 3 years in the culture at Paul Quinn for students being hesitant perhaps about mental health support to be embracing it as a campus, as individuals? How has the school played a role in their individual evolution to start to embrace this kind of service?
Okay, yeah. So what we've done, and I joined the campus last summer, so I've done my full year. And one of the things that we've done, and Prez has embraced, is really normalizing counseling. So anytime we're able to get in front of the students, whether that's on the soccer field, on the basketball court, volleyball court, it does not matter. We intend to change the dialogue from mental illness to mental health. So we explain to them that they're using it as a preventive measure, not necessarily as a crisis management option for them. Mm-hmm. So that they can take away the stigma that you only go to counseling when something is wrong. Mm-hmm. So this summer we did a full day of orientation, which was about 3.5 hours, and we included information on basic mental health care as it relates to nutrition, their sleeping patterns, exercise patterns, relationship coping styles, communication styles. We helped them to see that all of those contributed to how mentally healthy you are or you're not. One of the things I did in the orientation was give them my cell phone number. Immediately, I had every student text so that they would have access to us, because we want every one of them to know that you can reach out to us. We're not unattainable. We're not some creatures in the night that come in and send you to the hospital. Whatever you've heard about mental health, let's just deal with that on a basic level. We're here on campus to talk to you. Myself and Ms. Belton are available via cell phone. We can do phone sessions. We can do virtual. Most of the students come in, they schedule their appointment, and they sit down and talk. We wanted them to know that. We did that same orientation with the parents, because if the parents know about the services, they'll encourage their kids, their students, to go to the counseling services when they call home talking about the stressors that they're experiencing. Mm-hmm. So we're very upfront with them. We keep the doors to the clinic, the main door, open so that they know we're there. They can come in, they can schedule, or we'll do walk-ins. When we schedule their appointments, if they don't show up, we'll text them and remind them or call them. We'll go to the cafeteria, provide programming with groups. We do special programming, like we had a comedy show to help them understand the importance of self-care. So it's changed their perception of what mental health is. Psychiatric services are one component of it, but there's a lot of other things that are involved in making sure that you're mentally healthy.
Prez, it's like every other year y'all are doing something game-changing, not just for the campus, but for the sector at large. And this is almost an extension of things that you've done in years past, providing eyeglasses to the students, getting students involved in social justice, not only for the campus, but for the community. So there's, not developing, but there is a culture of, student, holistic health. And this is part of a sound retention strategy. This is part of a sound recruitment strategy. Was that the plan for developing something like this, to extend those things, or was it that you saw a need and here's what we can do to help it?
For us, Jared, we literally start with what is it that the students are telling us or showing us that they need. How can we become the best caretakers and stewards of their trust and their family's trust? And so much of, this is how you wind up having an institutional goal of eradicating intergenerational poverty, which is what we are now committed to doing. And it's because so much of the problems that we are having to address, their birthplace is scarcity. Mm-hmm. And when you really look back at the things we've had to address. So we implemented a dress code because we wanted our students to always be able to present themselves in a way which said, I feel good about who I am and I look as if I belong. Mm-hmm. And we got some criticism for that, right? Where people tried to say, oh, you're engaging in respectability politics. It had nothing to do with respectability politics and everything to do with the sense of one's self-worth, right? And so, we addressed that issue. Then we had the food desert. Well, let me say this. So we realized that many people don't have the clothes they need because they don't have the money they need to get the clothes. So let's have a clothes closet where people can get what they need for free. Then we look up and we're in a food desert. And people can't afford healthy produce, and we don't have access to a grocery store. So we address that issue. Then we look up and we've got an environmental justice issue. But that's because people don't have the respect for under-resourced communities to show them how much they care by not exposing them to harmful environmental decisions. Then we look around and, we had the eyeglasses issue. We had the pork issue, where we had to teach students in the communities how you don't have to eat food that is detrimental to your survival. That how are you going to perform in class if you can't see the board, right? Then we looked up and realized students couldn't afford to go to school, that they were borrowing too much money, that they weren't prepared when they finished because they didn't have access to internships, that they were shut out from meaningful career opportunities. They had gone to school, had been led to believe that they were competitive, and they weren't competitive because they didn't have all the tools everyone else had to compete. But all of these problems, the genesis of them is poverty. And, the trauma of poverty. We for several years, Dr. Grant and the rest of the staff and I would sit around and wonder, why are students who are succeeding here sabotaging themselves midway through their junior year? I mean, students who are performing well academically. And from a selfish perspective for us, everyone always wanted to give us a hard time about our graduation rate. And we're like, well, look, we're doing good things, but how do you explain to someone that you have a student with a 3.5 who just starts flunking courses, stops coming to class, wants to drop out, but doesn't want to leave? And so we started having conversations with students, and finally one student said to us, "This is the best my life has ever been. People love me here. They see me. They tell me I matter. There's no guarantee I'm going to have this experience when I leave." And then we started noticing how students were depressed and what they were using for coping skills. And, we went through when we recruited the students from Chicago, and they were coming from backgrounds that were just devastated by violence and living under the shadow of violence. I mean, the first year we recruited there, just about every high school we visited, someone had been shot that school year. And students who come from those experiences, who come from the trauma that poverty causes, there's no wonder that they're going to struggle with mental health. That is normal. The difference is no one's ever told them that it was normal. They've been made to feel as if they were less than because they were just going through a difficult period. And what in my far less technical language that Dr. Alexander uses so beautifully, the way I explain it to people is, you do not have to stay in the dark. All have periods where we struggle. But if you get the help you need, it is a short-term period. And then you move on. You get back and you're stronger. And, and I tell the students my story. I tell them what it was like to deal with sudden cardiac death, to die and have to be brought back to life, and to deal with the post-traumatic stress of that experience. And when you have these conversations and you have them out loud and you have them in a way where you're not embarrassed, it changes the sense of how the students see themselves and what they feel is safe. And we want them to know they're safe, they are loved, and we can have these conversations, and we will stand right next to you having them.
It's such a beautiful thing, but I'm a journalist, so I got to throw salt on everything. Part of what makes this so wonderful is because Paul Quinn intentionally recruits and grows deliberately, right? So it's not that Paul Quinn is we want a class of 1,500 students. So it's something where you can reach out and touch all the students. You can reach out and give them all your cell phone number. And this question is for all three of you. In the college's strategic plan to grow, how do you scale up these wonderful things that you do for your student body and do for your community as you expand, as you open a new campus in Plano, as you break enrollment records, as you get more athletic teams on campus, as you implement an urban work program? As you grow, how do you still say community focus and make sure that those services are high level?
Well, here, let me say from the design perspective, right? And then Dr. Grant and Dr. Alexander will explain how they actually make all the stuff that I come up with actually happen, right? So the reality of it is this. What we are scaling is the small college experience. We think each of the campuses that we replicate at the largest point should be about 1,500 students, which allows us to maintain that intimate focus. But this is foundational to who we are. Just as we will offer academic programs, like all our campuses will have a major in fundraising and philanthropy, all our campuses are going to have this same intentional focus on mental health. This is just who we are going to be. We are committed to it. We will continue to raise money for it. But it is just we don't see it as optional. We see it as foundational to the urban work college experience. This is who we are. This is what we do. We intend to keep doing it. Dr. Grant, I guess you guys.
I would add to that, as enrollment grows, the logistics of doing things like the mental health screenings, for example, has to grow. We probably were able to do the screenings over 2 or 3 days 3 years ago. Today, the screenings are happening with about 20 to 25 residents from UT Southwestern who come to campus who need a private room. A room with a door and 2 chairs. And so staff member literally will get an email from me that says, I need your office space for these Tuesdays and Thursdays in the month of July so that these assessments can happen. They're using my office this afternoon. And so it's planning and trying to still have that one-on-one feel because this assessment can be done paper pencil. But what we've learned is the students don't always describe their experiences in the same language that is used by professionals. We asked students on a survey, are you a victim of trauma, which is one of our, we now have a grant from the state of Texas, which is specifically for victims of crime, or victims who have been traumatized in the past. And we use that language and ask the student, are you a victim of trauma? They'll say no. Are you a victim of a crime? And they'll say no. But when we look at the specific story of that student, we know that that is not true, but they're self-reporting almost as a defense mechanism. And when you point out to the student that they said that their older brother had been killed in a car accident, or their family had food stability issues and they moved around a lot, then we have to show them these are traumas that you have dealt with in the past that don't necessarily make you a victim, but it means that you have needs for services that the college is going to provide to you. And we have to be flexible in how we go about these things. We have to use the language that the students are comfortable with. Continuing the one-on-one assessments is very important because it takes away some of the barriers to mental health and accessing services, because they can just check something on the box and not really have to talk and explain their experiences. And also having a representation of people of color on campus from a diverse background that can relate to the students. Ms. Belton is fluent in Spanish, and she's comfortable counseling students in Spanish. That's been part of our growth plan, as well as having interns who come into the clinic who, there's a young African-American male who comes in and volunteers as he's completing his hours under the state license requirements. And so our expansion is still meant to have a hands-on approach with the students. And with 550 students, it does feel a lot different when we have to push staff members out of their offices for the initial assessments. But from the students' perspective, they've had someone's undivided attention for almost an hour to talk about themselves with the goal of getting assistance. Mm-hmm. And it so far has worked very well, and the students remember, I talked to this person for an hour and they asked me a lot of questions, and now sometimes the next day or maybe the next week, that student might be tapped on the shoulder to say, hey, come on over and talk more in detail with someone in the clinic. So the high touch feel is still there even as we grow, and the grant helps us to continue that. And we hope to go into 2 more years under this grant from the state of Texas through the governor's office, and continue to expand into more services for students, not just counseling, but counseling is a primary component of the state grant.
And that's one of the things that we'll do in the counseling office. Even if we do not have the funding to actually hire full-time licensed professional counselors, we can still access resources within the community, because I'm a supervisor as a licensed professional counselor. So I can also supervise clinicians that are, like Dr. Grant mentioned, that are needing to get their counseling hours, the direct services. We can train them to come onto the campus and provide the services, and even provide more of a diverse clinical staff to the students. The programming that we offer will grow with the students' needs. So we're also working on programming to bring in your non-traditional students who may not come to the campus during the day, but they're taking online courses or they're coming in the evening. We're reaching out to them through email and telephonically to bring them into the counseling office or to utilize the resources. And then Prez mentioned the town hall meetings. We're doing that for psychoeducational purposes. So we may not be doing one-on-one counseling with you, but we are exposing you to mental health services and resources that you may not access now, but it will not be foreign to you when you graduate from college. You would have been exposed to mental health services that you can utilize even after you graduate.
Prez, I'll let you have the last word, man. If somebody is working to establish a culture like you guys have, yours happens to be around addressing poverty, what's the single biggest thing that a leader can do, that students can buy into, that faculty can support, that alumni can support? What is the spark that helps that culture to set in for something as important like mental health, or like addressing poverty, or like building wealth for African Americans? What is the spark for it?
Well, I think the most important thing the leader can do is to listen, right? I mean, because none of what we do was part of a playbook that I had coming in, right? I mean, these were things that our students either said they needed or demonstrated they needed, that our community needed or demonstrated that it needed. And what we have said is we're going to be an institution that addresses the needs of the day. We're not going to have conversations about are we relevant, because we're going to demonstrate to you why you cannot live without us. We're going to be what you need us to be. And I think if you do that, and then if you do it authentically, and if you do it honestly, and you do it in broad daylight, where, you know, when you hire amazing people and they do extraordinary things, you tell people you hired amazing people, and you tell people they've done extraordinary things, and you give them the ability to be recognized and praised for doing great work, and then you get out of the way and let them do that, I think then it takes hold, right? Because these programs have to live on after all of us are gone. I mean, we're serving the needs of people who have generational suffering. So we're not going to fix this in the next 5 years. We're not going to fix this in the next 10 years. So the only way it really gets fixed is all of us buy into it and our institutional goals become industry goals, which is why, we've come to try and transform all of higher education, because we think that's what our students need.